call this regularly scheduled meeting of the South Tahoe Public Utility District Director to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Do we have any comments from the audience? Please.
Recognizing me? I'm Jesse Garner from the Montgomery Estates Coal Creek Trail neighborhood. I'm here to thank you for my entire community for your cooperation and partnership. You have 2 lots in our neighborhood. You maintain them well. We have Forest Service, county, conservancy lots, and some privately owned unbuilt. But we have 245 built units, everybody working hard to keep up their defensible space. My neighbors save between $130 and $300 a year on their insurance because they get a wildfire mitigation credit because we are FireWise recognized and we have our defensible space certificates. Saturday the 7th is nationally recognized as Wildfire Awareness Day. And between the 7th of May and the 9th of October, which is National Fire Prevention Day, we work hard to keep things straightened up. Okay, thanks for your support in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's always nice to hear positive reinforcement. We appreciate your efforts as well. Does anybody else have anything to say?
No, I'm a member. I live in Montgomery Estates, and I can attest to the hard work that our neighborhood's putting together, and I really appreciate everybody doing their part. So thank you for recognizing our part as well.
Shane, there are 6 Montgomery Estates. Are you in Coal Creek Trail?
Golden Bear.
Golden Bear.
Yeah.
First to be recognized on the South Shore as a FireWise community, we were second. Now there's 2 more up on the north.
Haven't heard that one. Okay.
Thanks for what you do.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull 4C for discussion, please.
Okay. Okay, so do we have a motion to?
A motion to approve
that
the
item.
adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
You get to vote.
Okay, I'm showing 1.
Didn't come up on my screen.
Didn't come up?
No, on mine either.
Dave, did it come up on yours? He's voted.
He's the only one that voted.
Let me
I guess
reset.
There it
because
is.
it was his idea. I still don't have it.
Okay, let me try this again. Cancel vote. Reset vote. Reset. Start voting. About that time?
Dave's got it. I didn't mean to peek at
Came
you,
up on
Dave.
mine last time.
Shane got it last time. All right, let's try one more time.
Okay.
3rd time's the charm. Just gonna start vote. Kelly and Nick, anything?
Nothing.
I got it again.
It's weird.
Kelly, how
Oh,
would
it
you
just
like to
started,
vote?
like,
Yes.
just flickered on, and then now the screen's gone off.
Nick, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimous.
Okay, so now we will bring 4C.
Yes, and I pulled this because several months ago we discussed this item. I pulled it one time before, and this is the emergency proclamation or extending the emergency. And I raised a concern at that point that I didn't feel like we were in a state of emergency, and I guess we agreed to keep it one more month and then discuss it then. And we've gone several months since then, and I think it's time to discuss it again. My my feeling is that we're not in the COVID emergency anymore. Whether the governor keeps the proclamation open or not is his business, but I think for our business, we're done with that, and we should go back to business as usual.
Which I don't necessarily disagree with. I've always been more likely to like this being in person. But you realize that extends to committee meetings,
Right.
to everything. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie, is there not legislation pending for this to,
There is.
where it's not going to be an emergency, correct?
So the legislation that's pending right now is to possibly extend this past 2023.
Oh, okay.
So the governor's order is in place, the executive order, through December 31st of 2023, allowing virtual meetings if the district so decides. And then after that, they're working on legislation to possibly extend it even further and permanently. So
Where it would no longer require the
the governor's proclamation, right? It would just be the new way that
There's no
business would be
emergency
done. Yeah, no emergency
involved.
necessary.
Yeah, and I'm cool with it if it becomes general law, but to be operating under an emergency that doesn't exist, I think is taking advantage, and we shouldn't do that. We should go back to the laws that exist. That's just my opinion.
So at this point, Gary, do we need to vote on it, or do we need to bring it? I guess if we don't approve it,
If we don't approve it, then it would just expire after the 30 days that are currently in place.
I do have-
You've got an agenda item before you right now. You can either move to approve it or move to deny it.
I just had a quick question. When, during the Caldor fire and our virtual meetings of that process, did that exist under this ordinance, or was that something else? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, what allowed for that?
Yeah, this proclamation did allow for that. We could have, I don't know if we could have done anything different under the Caldor fire since we were evacuated. I'm not aware of another opportunity, but maybe Gary knows more.
Say that again.
Well, I was just asking when everyone was evacuated and we had done the meeting virtually during Caldor, and Shelley was surrounded by gargoyles. Was that, did we have that meeting, was that like permissible as a result of this order? Or would that have been permissible regardless?
because that was we were in a
Right, so
a
you see what I'm
different
saying,
state
like-
of emergency, exactly.
Because if that was, I guess that would be my only objection would be, I like the flexibility in space, just given the realities of the world. But if it's permissible, given some other means, then it doesn't really become relevant to me.
If the situation arises where you feel you need to have a virtual meeting in the future, you can put that on the agenda as the first thing on that meeting and then allow it to be held virtually.
Seems workable. So I'd move that we not approve this agenda item 4C. The-
I don't know. It just seems like COVID's still swirling about in DC and other places. I mean, in China, they're still like locking down entire cities. So I don't see it harming us in any way by maintaining the emergency situation. So I guess for me, it doesn't really seem to matter one way or the other. I mean, if we can call for a resolution to have virtual meetings kind of at will, then I guess that's probably sufficient to keep us moving forward. But I just don't really see the harm in having this be on the books and ready to
Just
draw.
one follow-up comment to that is that just because you pass the resolution, if you decide to pass it, you don't have to have virtual meetings.
Right.
You're not required to.
Leaves the door
I mean,
But-
I prefer to meet in person, and I do everything I can to be there in person. So I guess for me, it's just a detail that we got to work through every meeting, and it's on consent. Doesn't really seem to, I don't know, doesn't seem to hurt anything.
Anyone used it? Has anyone used it?
I
think the operations committee has.
I mean, I guess at this level,
Is anyone in terms of another
I-
organization?
Are we using the virtual?
I mean, I don't think
Are
we take.
we using the right from this resolution, which, like operations committee
Yes,
is
the
using it?
committees are. The
Yes.
committees definitely are, yes. But we don't have anybody calling in for this meeting, for the board meeting, no.
No, but I mean, historically, had anyone used it? Like at this board level? Because I had used it at the committee level once, I recall, maybe more.
We've had Cephalou, Director Cephalou's used it. I think we had, didn't somebody else use it also? Did one of you call in for a board meeting? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember exactly who, but I think there was one other.
Yeah, I've called in, but it was under normal Brown Act. You know.
Yeah, and there is that.
There is that provision.
There is that provision, so if it's necessary, it's not, we can do that as well. Okay, what do you think, guys? We have a motion, do we have a second? Well, I'll go ahead and second that motion, and then we can vote on it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So just so we understand, the motion on the floor is to deny this resolution and not renew it for 30 days. So you're either voting yes to deny it or no to not deny it, just so we understand. Okay, let's start the vote.
Now my screen's all dim. It's okay.
Is it blanked out?
Yeah, but I don't
I'm-
use it anyway. I read off the papers anyway.
So I have a vote from Peterson, I have a vote from Ramzos. Are you okay with me verbally calling out the rest of the votes?
Yeah.
Okay. President Sheehan, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Exline, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
And that motion passes 3-2. Or 3-1, I'm sorry. Did I say
I was like.
sorry? 3-1, my fault. Thank you, John.
Well, it's hard when things aren't going like they're supposed to.
Exactly. I don't know why what happened. Okay, so then we're on to A.
Yes, we're on to item 6A, Bijou Pump Station Rehabilitation Project.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Adrian Coombs, senior engineer. I'm here to request approval to hire an engineering consultant to design the Bijou Pump Station Rehabilitation Project. The Bijou Pump Station, sewer pump station, is our third rehab of the big 5 pump stations. This one has a couple of challenges that make this a little bit difficult than some of the other ones. And I've got a couple just pictures, and I just want to show you the site. One of the big things is this is a very constrained site that we're working at. It's in the parking lot of McDonald's on Lake Tahoe Boulevard. Here's a Google Earth view.
Say congrats on getting a map up. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Took your advice from last meeting. So this here is where the pump station is located. It's on a 50 by 50 foot parcel that's landlocked in the middle of the McDonald's parking lot right next to the dumpster. Got another just site plan here. So you can see 50 feet by 50 feet this way. We've got 2 buildings there. The first building is where our electrical equipment is located, and then below the electrical room is where the pumps are. Behind a concrete wall, there's our wet well. In the second building, we have our generator. The wet well there's 2 big safety concerns. The first one is the wet well. It's a confined space where you need a permit to enter, and in order to get to the bottom of the wet well, you've got a staircase that goes down, there's a landing, and then it comes back around. The wastewater fills up in there. We've got to get in there to clean out that wet well. If there's an injury, it's basically a self-extraction where you can't go and rescue somebody. We had our JPIA come out and do a whole analysis of the confined space, and they really found that we needed to upgrade the wet well so that we could extract somebody that was injured inside. The other big safety concern is the electrical room. there's not enough space in the electrical room to meet electrical code clearances. It's once you have an open electrical panel, you need 4 feet to just have clear space. And I'll show you this here is our electrical room. And you can see that if you open one of these doors, you're almost pinned right against the other side. So there's not going to be room to take out this electrical equipment, put in new electrical, and meet all the current codes. So we need more space for our electrical room. Here's the wet well. So this is the entry. This is the only entry through this door, and then here's the staircase that you go down. So these are really, a couple of issues with this existing pump station that make this a very difficult project. We're going to need to create more space for the electrical room where we don't have much, and we're going to need to do something with this wet well to really modify it from its existing condition without much space on the property. So the first part of this project is going to be coming up with an alternatives analysis, looking at different ways we can rehab the station, possibly build a new one while keeping the existing station in service. This is a really critical pump station because it collects all the wastewater from the state line to Ski Run. So, a part of doing any kind of rehab will be how do we keep this pump station in service. Another part of this is that there's 3 pump stations pumping into 2 pipelines, and there's issues when they're all operating on some of the pump stations not being able to pump into the force main. So the first part is to come up with an alternatives analysis on what are we actually going to do here, come up with operational scenarios on how the 3 pump stations will work together, which will help us determine what type of controls and instrumentation we'll need, and then to start the permitting process. The second task of this is going to be to design the project, create construction documents, and then the third task for the consultant will be to assist us during bidding with any questions at that time. At this time, we're just requesting the beginning part, which is determining the operational strategy for the 3 pump stations, coming up with the various alternatives, and starting the CEQA permitting. Once we've determined how we're going to move forward, that's when we'll come back and ask for the second task order for design. And then once we have completed the documents and we're going out to bid, we'll ask for that third task of assistance during bidding from the consultant.
Any questions?
Questions? Yeah.
I just was curious, kind of the projected timeline for the next 2 tasks.
So we're looking to get 90% design done by the end of the year so we can apply for SRF funding. So the first task, it looks like it's going to go till about August or September. I think we would know probably before everything is completed what direction we were going, and that's when I would come back and ask for task 2 to be approved. We're looking at task 2. They've got it right now on the schedule to be done with 90% design by December 15th, I believe it was. And then we were looking at final design by March of next year. At this time, we are looking to build this project in 2024, but we would want to bid the project as soon as possible due to issues with the current supply chain.
Have you worked with this group before?
I have not personally worked with them. They have worked on some projects at my last company that I was a part of operating, and they did really well.
Are they familiar with Tahoe and regulations and other things that?
They are doing some work for us. I believe they're doing electrical condition assessments for all of our pump stations, so I think they are familiar with Tahoe. I don't know how familiar they are with all of the specific permitting, but they do have a sub-consultant that is familiar that would be doing all of the CEQA and anything related to TRPA.
No questions.
Questions? Okay. You read the requested board action. So we've got two items here. Number one, we're requesting that the board approve the proposed scope of work from Water Systems Consulting to provide engineering services for the Bijou Pump Station Rehabilitation Project. And number two, authorize the general manager to execute task order number 2 in the amount of $116,411.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Show up on everybody's? No? Okay, I'm just gonna call a verbal vote. President Sheehan, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Exline, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Peterson, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Ramsos, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to payment of claims, and I move approval of payment of claims in, oh, wait, Paul, sorry. Trying to speed things along. And actually, now I can vote on the screen.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm gonna reset it again, so you can go away. 'Cause we want-
Okay, Paul, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be such an eager beaver.
So today we're requesting the board adopt ordinance number 581-22, set new water and sewer capacity charges. As you know, district staff and our rate consultant, Sean, Ward with HDR, have been working on updating fees, the district charges for water and sewer capacity. And at the last board meeting, you saw the latest presentation and data that Sean provided. And everything that we're requesting today is consistent with 2 weeks ago, nothing's changed. The last time these studies were done was back in 2006 and 2008, so it was absolutely time to revisit them. Also, there was board interest in modifying the structure to incentivize both the workforce and low-income housing projects. And as we saw during the presentation, I think we've accomplished that. And for example, the combined water and sewer capacity charges for the first phase of the Sugar Pine development under our current fee structure is estimated at just under $2 million. And under the new recommended charges, that total fee is closer to 1.1, so significant reduction for that project. So the recommended sewer capacity charges are developed to be applied to residential developments based on square footage of the living units. And for example, the recommended charge for a typical single-family residence for our service area, that's 2,736 square feet, is $11,324, and that comes to $4.14 per square foot. And so obviously that charge per square foot will be applied to whatever size the development is. And just for example, obviously a much smaller 750 square foot unit would only pay $3,100. And that's compared to $8,235 they pay today. So it's definitely a savings for those type of developments. For residential remodels or additions, and this is coming straight from the consultant, we're recommending that additional sewer capacity be charged when the structural square footage is increased by more than 500 square feet. And that language is currently in the attached ordinance. And if that doesn't work for us in the future, we can definitely modify that language if necessary to change whatever that square foot total becomes. And then on the commercial side, the recommended sewer capacity charges are based on the number of applicable plumbing fixture units or number of seats for restaurants. And this is the same methodology used today, except that today there's currently a minimum charge applied. And the recommended charge per fixture is $755. And once again, for certain developments, this is going to be beneficial, specifically like just commercial office space, which doesn't use a lot of our sewer capacity, and so it kind of makes sense that they would be paying less. For example, a minimum charge for commercial space right now is $8,235. charge would be closer to about $3,800, so significant savings for that. Then on the water side, the recommended charge is strictly based on water meter size and the flow capacity associated with each meter size. And you'll see in your agenda item in the attached ordinance, the charge for each meter size ranging from 3/4 inch all the way up to a 16 inch. So the most common meter size in our system, of course, is 3/4 inch for typical residential. The recommended charge for that meter is $11,015, and that's compared to the current charge of $6,832 today. This increase definitely was not unexpected, since it's been 16 years since these charges have been looked at. Also, based on that last study that was done in 2006, the charge for that 3/4 inch meter today would actually be nearly $13,000 if the recommended fees in that study had been fully implemented by the board over a period of 5 years. So lastly, it's recommended that the fees as developed be adjusted annually based on the change to the ENR construction cost index, and that language also is currently in the ordinance. So if that's something you're not interested in, we can just pull that out and we would adopt it without that language. But if you're okay with that, that's the recommended annual adjustment. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then I'll read the requested board action.
I got a quick
Just one comment I'll add to Paul. We talked about this annual adjustment, and what it's really doing is protecting your rate from inflation. Because if you do nothing, every year you're actually getting less. So, and it's a well-recognized index related to construction costs. And this is something that a lot of other districts do utilize on their rate structures.
Paul, have we received any comments, letters of support, anything from the public that we're aware of?
The only comment I received is from somebody at Tahoe Prosperity, and they were happy to see the change.
And then just maybe, I don't know if this is an error, but maybe it's right. Section 6457, looking at the per outdoor seat 1 to 20, you have that at 0?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the current policy today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
No, I think this was a great process with that kind of began from the time in which this had last been engaged with at the district, meets our desire to help affordable housing projects. I think it was a really great process in that it created a system that was equitable for everybody, in that you price per square foot, so it naturally is cheaper for affordable housing, thereby reducing their fees significantly. So I think it was it's a good process and a good product that we were able to put out. So thanks to everyone involved.
So, question for you: the ENR CCI, are we taking the 20 cities average or the San Francisco index? We should clarify which one we're looking at.
I don't think we got that specific in the language, so I guess we can discuss that and see which one's the better one to follow.
Yeah, there are individual indices for each city used,
Okay.
and then there's the 20 cities average, and we should just declare which one we're using.
California. Do you know if that's correct, Steve, by any chance? I'm more familiar with the exact. Okay.
I didn't hear the answer.
He was more familiar with what you were referencing, the 20 average.
20 city. So I guess when we do the resolution, we should state the 20 city average, then if that's what our intent is here.
Yeah. Do you think we need to add that?
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to add it, and then we can modify the ordinance to include it when it goes into before it's executed.
You think we should use a San Francisco index?
20 city.
That's the average is probably better, because if you use San Francisco, I think that's going to be much higher.
Almost always would be. Okay.
Yeah, I guess as an index, it's just a matter of whether the whole country inflates at the same rate, or is San Francisco inflating at a greater rate or lesser rate. And then understanding that, what is South Lake Tahoe more similar to? So if our gas prices are really driving our inflation, that's a California thing. So it seems to me that the San Francisco index is probably more appropriate. And it doesn't mean that you initially set the connection fees any higher. It just means you index them based on a more local index than in the future. But I guess that would be my recommendation. But I think, but I'm not the technical person here. So
Do you want, when you make the motion, maybe direct staff to find the most appropriate index for this geographical area?
that'd be better.
Then we can clarify that and include that in the ordinance.
Okay, if there's nothing else then, the present board action is to adopt ordinance number 581-22, an ordinance of the South Tahoe Public Utility District setting water capacity charges and sewer connection fees and amending Administrative Code Section 3.1.49A, 3.1.49C, 3.1.49E, 4.5.7, and associated with fee schedule, and direct staff to research the most appropriate cost index for the inflationary adjustment.
Very good. So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And rather than trying to send you the vote, I'm just going to do a voice vote. President Sheehan, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Exline, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Peterson, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Ramsos, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay, now this really brings us to payment of claim. And I move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $2,267,169.47.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. President Sheehan, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Exline, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Peterson, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Director Ramsos, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay, standing and ad hoc committees and liaison reports. Does anybody have anything?
I do. A couple things. On April 29th, we did have an ECC, and I forget who I was standing in for, but I substituted for somebody in that. For Chris? Okay. And then Aqua was this week, Association of California Water Agencies, and so I was down there Tuesday through Thursday, and actually today at the 9:30 to 11 slot, Julie sat on a panel and talked about fire safety and the role of water systems in that. It was actually a very good, very effective panel. So that was down in Sacramento, and I thought it was a pretty good conference. They're back to in-person, fully unrestricted numbers and whatnot. So it's a lot more effective than watching it on TV, you know. So anyway, those are my reports under this item.
Thank you for attending. Does anybody else have anything? How about board member reports? Nick?
So I attended Earth Day yesterday, and the STPUD 10 was great. Shelley did a great job. The kids loved it. My kids loved it. The swag was great. So yeah, kudos to the effort at Earth Day.
I went by on Earth Day. I walked by the booth, but it was so crowded I couldn't get up to the front. So, no, it was really a lot of people. Good turnout.
Let me just add one thing to the Aqua report. We're in Region 3 of Aqua. That's the foothill agencies, and I went to the Region 3 meeting yesterday, and just report out that Evo is the groundwater committee representative to Region 3, and so he gave a very thorough report on what was going on in the groundwater committee, and so I think he's going to leave tracks in a lot of places that are going to have to be filled. So, yeah.
El Dorado Water Agency purveyor.
Yeah, two things there. We had a board meeting on April 13th, and we had the public hearing for the groundwater sustainability plan, and then that passed the resolution there for the water agency, and I think that was the final step before it gets sent to the state. So that was a good milestone, and feather in Evo's cap for that. And then on the 21st, John and I had a conference call, well, a Zoom call with El Dorado Water Agency leadership, and just discussed how we can work together a little bit more closely. John, you might want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, there's really three main areas that we talked about. One was the ARPA funding. We had made a request for hydrants, similar to what we did at the city. We were successful at the city. We have not so far been successful at the county, so we just wanted to emphasize our need and desire for those ARPA funds. And Ken will keep an eye on it for us and keep us engaged. And I would expect up to date at every board meeting or once a month as to where that process lies. He feels like there will be some funds opening up, and hopefully we'll get some good news by the end of this year. The second item was in the past we've called it our cost share projects. It's now referred to as the grants program at the water agency. And that process is undergoing changes. We, again, just emphasized our projects and the value of our projects, and I just wanted to keep it on their radar. With their new strategic plan, there's a lot more, interest in water agency funding, and we don't want to get squeezed out, and we want to make sure the East Slope, gets our share of the funding back. So I just wanted to talk to Ken about that, and again, reemphasize our projects and work with their new employee, Kyle, and also their consultant on moving those projects forward. And then thirdly, we talked about the Groundwater Management Agency and our partnership on that, and again, looking for opportunities to maybe increase our cooperation and increase the water agency's role in the groundwater management planning on the South Shore.
Yep. That was it.
Doesn't appear we have any staff or attorney report. So that leads us to you, John.
Okay. We'll start out with a little staffing update. Actually, a lot going on with staffing these days. For customer service manager, we were planning to have interviews this week, but then kind of at the last minute, 3 of those interviewees dropped out, so we decided to extend that job posting for 2 weeks until May 15th, and we're planning for interviews on May 26th. And then for the temporary seasonal workers, we continue to advertise for additional temporary workers for underground repair water, sewer, and DVR. And then for the finance admin assistant, this is Susan's retiring. This advertisement closed this week. We're now reviewing 16 applications, one of those in-house, and interviews coming up later this month. And then in heavy maintenance, Larry Lynch is retiring after 25 years with the district. So we actually began advertising for his replacement 2 hours ago. So lots going on with retirements and recruitments in a very challenging job market. Next item, Lake Valley Fire. Had a very productive meeting with Lake Valley yesterday. We met at the old post office site on the corner of Black Bart and Pioneer Trail. We looked over the site. We brought out some utility plans, some site plans that we have. We talked about their ideas for a new fire station that will replace their station at Golden Bear. They need Lake Valley needs a fairly large lot that's well located in their service area, so strategically located with good access, preferably a vacant parcel, of course. So our lot up there, pretty much, it's the only lot out there that checks those boxes. So as directed by the board 1 or 2 meetings ago, I continue to work with Lake Valley in this process. I think it's Lake Valley is looking to tap into the county's TOT funding to build this facility and some other funding that's out there. They're also talking to the county. The county's interested in some space at this new facility and maybe even parking a snowplow there. So I think that would be welcome. And also I talked to the chief about the district's needs, and he welcomed any joint venture with Lake Valley and the county on this new project. So we're still thinking about this and other needs we have. One thing that was brought up is a confined space rescue system, and maybe having all that equipment in a one trailer and maybe locate that at this new station, and it would be accessible to the district staff and fire agencies and perhaps even other staff around in the region around the lake, North Tahoe, Tahoe City, for example. So I think the next step is to meet with the county and TRPA on zoning, on the land use element, on coverage issues. That old post office lot is part of I believe it's a 20-acre parcel that includes our ERB. So that parcel is massively overcovered. But we've been through that before for public service projects. We can work with TRPA and solve that, especially for a new joint fire station facility. But we'll work with the county and TRPA on that. And I think that's it at this point. I'll keep the board fully informed on this and engage Gary if we get much deeper into the property issues. Any comments, questions on this today? Okay. 11C, payment of claims process alternatives. So we've had some discussion at the board level on this on and off this year. Kind of the desire to streamline meetings or perhaps cancel meetings when there's very little coming forward for action. Items that can wait for the next meeting, for example. And actually, one of the board's goals for me this year is to investigate ways to reduce the number of board meetings. So this is a piece to that potentially. Currently, the need to approve payment of claims at a board meeting twice per month has been an obstacle in our ability to, I guess, cancel these low content meetings. So we've been working with Gary to see if there's other options for our payment of claims process. And so Gary's done some research. He completed a memo which outlines some options. And maybe, Gary, you can just briefly take the board through that memo and your research.
Sure, I'll be glad to. The Public Utility Code requires that the Board of Directors approve payment of claims. And looking at this a little bit deeper, there is a government code section that allows local public agencies like the district to allow a delegation of authority with certain constraints to officers of the district. And so there's some protections. There's got to be, there's got to be two officers that approve the payment of claims. It can't be just, it couldn't be just the chief financial officer, or it couldn't be just the general manager. You need at least two. So there's kind of a range of what we, just for sake of discussion, thought we'd throw out to you to think about and how you might want to proceed with this in the future. I mean, obviously, the board could elect to do nothing and just leave it the way it is and bring the payment of claims, continue to bring them on twice a month to the board for approval. The district could delegate limited authority. So there could be restrictions on the amount that you want district staff to approve on their own, a certain dollar amount. You could also limit it to certain types of payments. Things, maybe there's some things that are more urgent that need to be taken care of. Maybe it's on construction projects, as an example, that could be handled. But you can set all those parameters up to the extent you want to limit that. You could also delegate it to certain types of claims, payment of claims to certain officers, and maybe other types of claims to other ones. You can make it as simple, I think, or as complex as you want to do. And obviously you could do a complete delegation of authority to approve payment of claims to two officers, two or more officers, for everything. And whichever, if you decide to do any of those, what we would recommend also is that after the next board meeting, after those claims have been approved by district officers, that list be brought back to the board to, I think, similar to what we do, I believe it is on the audits, to receive and file that claim list. So the board can look at it and see if there's anything there that is concerning to you or you have questions on. You would still get to see where the payments are going. It'd obviously be after the fact, but you'd still have that ability to make sure you're informed on the payments. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And so I think what John and I had talked about, and with Paul, that wanted to present this to you and hear your feelings about, you want to do this, you want to do, what are you comfortable, I guess, what are you comfortable with? The one thing that we need to take a look at, it came up during our discussion earlier today, was the thought was, well, maybe we should have of the people authorized to approve, maybe it should be a board member and an officer. The way the statute's written, it says officer, and I don't know that includes a board member. And so we were going to take a look at that to see if that is something you want, that we need to confirm that a board member could be one of the approving persons.
What do you guys think about that? Would you rather have it just be staff or?
I think I'd rather have it as the board, but can we just reduce the frequency to once a month?
Yes, I was wondering, is there a way to kind of forecast out what a payment of claims might be, and then revisit that as part of the next board meeting to kind of say, okay, here's what we forecasted, what we, landed on. I guess to me it seems like there's a way to get at this without having to have two meetings just for the payment of claims piece.
So for instance, at the first meeting, have a projection of what the payment of claims would be if we had a second.
Likely to be based on what we know and what's coming in. And
possibly, it wouldn't be perfect, definitely.
no.
Although the process that Gary just described would probably be the simplest and the most accurate, actually, because it would be the full payment of claims. And just to expand a little bit on what he was saying and what John and I talked about, and what we would prefer, if you did want to appoint somebody, we would prefer that John and I and one other check signer be appointed, as well as at least two board members. And then, depending on who's available, there could be multiple different combinations of who could and couldn't approve. And then, like Gary said, you would see all of those payments on the very next board agenda. They would just be under consent.
But they'd already be paid.
Yes.
I think we've seen that at other agencies, at other cities that operate under different codes than the district does. Gary, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, the government code section doesn't apply just to utility codes. It applies to local agencies, including cities and counties, that they have processes that they have delegated authority to various. A lot of times it's to various departments, depending on obviously the size of the public agency, but you'll see a lot of them will even delegate authority for, certain types of payments related to that department's work. And so a lot of the department heads will have their own approval authority for their work. And so not everything comes to the full board or city council for approval. So and I think that it's a function of, particularly when you get into larger agencies, be able to keep even those that have, like city councils often meet weekly. Even a lot of those agencies, they don't put a payment claims on their agendas. It's all handled by department heads or city managers. The thing that we hadn't looked at yet is should there be some see what other requirements or procedures that other agencies are utilizing for financial responsibility. Should the authorized officers be bonded or something? I don't know. And so there may be some requirements, and then Paul was going to check with your accountants and auditors to see, is it appropriate for someone in his department that's could be. It seems like they might be a good person since they're handling all this stuff, but should they be separated from approval authority versus preparing the payment of claims? So there may be some issues there. We need to ferret out a little bit.
Well, I guess just from my own standpoint, I get this list, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. What am I going to say? Don't pay the fourth one, or so it's a list of bills, it's a list of invoices, and I routinely say, pay them. So is that step of bringing it to the board really that important or that valuable? Perhaps just, or at least in advance, maybe notifying the board, here's the ones we paid over the last month. That to me, that would be, it's basically giving me notice what bills we paid, and just speaking for myself, that's enough for me. So if you approved them or you signed them in advance and then just report to us once a month, that'd be good enough for me.
I think in all my years, consecutive years on the board, I think maybe one time Eric Schaefer had something, and I can't remember it exactly, if it was maybe like a mistake. Do you remember, Paul?
I don't remember, we actually talked about that earlier.
But so, I mean, we're talking about 12, 13 years.
He plucked it out of the sky?
Yeah, he
Wow.
noticed something, and I almost want to say it was like a typo, but I could be wrong. But I know it's only been one time in over a decade.
Well, Eric is an accountant, so.
And he is a CPA, so.
The board prior approval has not proved
Right.
itself to be a critical step.
I would agree
But
with
perhaps
that.
board, information after the fact, once a month, just report to us what payments were made. That then, however frequent we have our meetings, you could report the payment of claims at that next meeting. That, and then the internal checks and balances that you were talking about with staff. I don't know. Work something out. Propose it.
I like the two officer and a board member, maybe the president or vice president.
Then she'd have to come in and sign checks all the time.
Or just check it or whatever. But I like
Actually,
that, and I think as long as we're transparent.
It would be an electronic approval. We would email it to probably both the president and vice president, whichever one was available. They would just respond back with their approval. They're not actually having to manually sign the check. That's done electronically.
Well, that's what I have to do with that other board. So, yeah, that'd work. Just to e-sign the equivalent list here. That'd be fine.
Is that the one thing that's keeping us meeting every other week?
I think that was our biggest obstacle.
Yeah.
An administrative obstacle.
I say that's, you've solved it. I guess the question on bonding and making sure that we're being transparent to the ratepayers and all that stuff is important. That stuff shows up in the consent calendar.
And I think we would, the records of the approval by whichever two officers, board member it is, that would be maintained by the district. And that then that list, those approved lists would be submitted on the consent calendar for you. whatever's put together eventually, we'd prepare a resolution and probably to adopt that and then put it into the board policy manual. So I think the next step would be for us to work with staff in finishing some of the details and then bring, I don't know if I'd bring a resolution first. I'd probably bring a proposed outline of these are the steps, this is what we're recommending, make sure that's okay. And if everybody's nodding in the right direction, then we can prepare a resolution to that effect.
That sound good to everybody?
Yep.
I just want to say two things. I like the idea certainly of including 2 board members, whether just president and vice president. And then I just kind of more broadly to our meeting schedule. It doesn't work for me if we say yes sometimes or no sometimes. People ask for me meetings weeks and months in advance. So I need a defined schedule. So it can't be laissez-faire. Like if it's once a month, that's fine. If it's one Thursday, like the first or third Thursday, that's fine. But like I need to have kind of consistency through the process.
So in other words,
yeah, like
we're not going to make it as
no, I
our
can't
meetings
like
as needed.
I'll have an issue if the day before we're just canceling meetings without that. That'll become a serious issue for me.
Yeah, a little more to that. I don't. This will give us an opportunity to cancel those low-use meetings. I think you would find out the Wednesday before the board meeting, but I wouldn't expect a lot of meetings to be canceled or that we're going to go to a once a month.
See what I'm saying? Like what I'm worried about is
Sure.
just that the impact of, oh yeah, can you meet in these various times? And people ask constantly for this block, and you say like no, and I say no for a week and a half, and the day before you're like, oh, we're canceling it. That rubs me the wrong way. Just to be really blunt with you.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll plan on keeping the first and third Thursdays on meetings, and as soon as possible, but at least by the Wednesday prior to the week prior to the board meeting, we would know absolutely, for sure at the latest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open, but just that one detail, as much transparency into that as possible would be really helpful.
Right, and also, Melanie, we're working on a system to kind of plan out our board meetings down the road a little further. So we balance the board meetings, we balance the presentations, we make the most use of your time when you come here. So you don't have a meeting that's very short, followed, and then you have a meeting that's very, very long. So we're working on that as well.
Yeah, I guess I was angling for a once-a-month meeting. And that,
This is...
that's not possible. So, yeah, I guess...
It is possible. I don't know if it's best, just because...
Right, just because those could be really drawn out, I guess.
We've got a lot. I mean, this is a very complex organization. We're not just water. We're not just sewer. There's a lot going on. We have some meetings as it is that are, 2.5 hours plus. So I can just... I think maybe this is a step, and we'll see how it goes.
You take it. I could take a 6-hour
Yeah.
meeting or whatever.
And then if you miss one, then all of a sudden you're 2 months out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my experience is that a district this size needs to meet more than once a month, just from my observation. I mean, there's some smaller districts we represent they have a budget of maybe, 7 or 10 million, maybe single purpose water or sewer, and they don't have the number of things going on that you do. And from my perspective, having worked for this district quite a while, the 2 meetings a month work really well to keep everything moving and keeping your board informed and getting your input. I think it's valuable, and having a set schedule avoids, I'll use the word chaos of having to put together special meetings, which are often difficult to schedule. At least with 2 meetings a month, you know exactly when they're going to occur for the whole year, and that's certainty for you in planning your lives. And hopefully it makes it easier rather than having to have Melanie start calling you up and saying, Hey, can you meet here, and then that's a big burden. You know, she's got a lot of stuff to do also, and then trying to arrange special meetings are difficult to get a quorum present, especially if it's important. You want more than a quorum, you want the entire board. So that's just my non-legal 2 cents that from my observations of this district and others.
Yeah, and I'll just add to piggyback on Gary's. I've done a little research with other organizations around the lake, and that if they're meeting once a month, they're typically scheduling 6 to more special meetings a year. And it does really kind of, break up the process. It doesn't provide the continuity. And I know a lot of times, even when we have an extra week in our schedule between meetings, the board members are traveling, you're out of town, you're doing your personal business. So then to try to call together a special meeting, we're working a little bit by crisis, and I don't get excited about that. I want things to run as smoothly as possible, and I get it, less meetings are great, but if we're going to be scheduling a bunch of special meetings, it really adds a lot of extra workload and difficult to get us all here at the same
So
time.
I guess, looking back in the last year, has there been like maybe one meeting that we would have canceled?
Exactly, yeah.
So,
Maybe a few, but I think those are definitely outliers.
I guess, the flexibility isn't bad, per se, and I think there's
Have-
enough oversight with boards, staff, plus the other things. Have that flexibility.
I guess it's always nice to be able to have the option.
If we have enough
But
notice.
realistically, it's probably not going to be an option we're going to use that often. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, well, and to Nick's earlier point, I've just been kind of thinking in the last few minutes with our system to look down at least 3 to 6 board meetings, focus on those. The sooner we can plan those skipped meetings, the better.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely will work on that point. So with all this being said, you're the boss. If you want to meet, however often you want to meet, we'll meet.
Yeah, I think if we just adjust this claims payment process, it improves the process anyway. And whether or not we skip a meeting, it gives us the flexibility to do that. So I don't see any
Yeah,
problem with that.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's the way to go.
Start with this. We'll see how it works.
Yep.
Probably bring something back next time to discuss.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Actually do have a couple more items to add to my report, and the first one of those is Red Lake water quality. We brought this to the board a couple of meetings ago, April 7th. We were seeing elevated levels of iron in the Red Lake area, almost certainly due to old deteriorating steel water lines. And I think we talked about this last time. Iron is a secondary standard, so at these higher levels, it's not a health hazard. It's a taste and color issue. But of course, still something we are aggressively responding to. So here's some of what we've done in the past few weeks. First of all, our own lab is now completing the iron tests in-house. It was taking like 10 to 14 days to get these iron results, even with an expedite request.
It bears adding that we haven't actually successfully ran an iron yet, test with standards. We are not certified to run iron. We will not get certified to run iron. It is not economically feasible to do a mid-year certification for something completely new. We gave up our certification in 2017. I fully trust that we'll get the right answers, but we'll nevertheless send the results to a contract lab at a very low expense and wait for the results to come when they come, so that we have official results to actually tell our customers and take decisions. But this will cut several weeks, in between our testing this line or seeing if a solution works, and it'll be faster. There has never been this much lag from the time we send samples to labs until we get our results, and they are refusing to do them faster. Even at double the price. Metals are really cheap anyway, just because they don't have the manpower. So this is part of why we're doing this as well.
So Dan, you're actually running the test. You're getting results and then at some point when the certified lab kicks back their results, then we can kind of cross-validate?
That's correct.
Okay.
And our results will be very flat. We'll do a sort of a shortcut test with a correction factor. But we're talking about orders of magnitude here. We're trying to compare, 20 versus 1,500. So we'll be fine. We'll know whether there's iron contamination or not. But yes, and then we will corroborate how close we got, and I'm sure it'll be quite.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's good.
And the standard actually applies at the well, not in the distribution system.
That's correct. As far as the maximum contaminant levels, that's all done at the well. This is a localized problem that indicates that our system might not be where we want it to be. But my understanding of the rules is that yes, we're not in violation of MCL, and yes, that this is a terrible taste, I might add. Another issue with it.
Hey Dan, could you come up to the podium? It's help us hear a little bit better. And yeah, so this testing by our own lab, we can get results back essentially the same day.
Great.
And help track this problem down.
If I may, essentially the same day is correct. The rules call for the water to be acidified for 16 hours because iron has a tendency to cling on to the plastic, which in the bottle, so you have to give it time to uncling. So it will be the next day.
But nonetheless, you can kind of track as you guys do your flushing and other mitigation measures. You can kind of track.
Yes, so this is what I mean by shortcuts. I don't mind not waiting the 16 hours, letting our guys know, yep, you're at 3,000 or you're at 20.
Right.
We will know that. So since we're not reporting the numbers, since we're not saying these are legitimate numbers, then yes, the next day or the same day if needed.
Are we seeing any significant reduction in iron numbers based on some of your monitoring? Or?
Well, we have done one experiment, I guess I can call it an experiment, one test of flushing the line at Red Lake at low volume, at low flow. And yes, on that one measurement we took tests in the morning, we took tests in the afternoon, we took tests through the street. We saw a significant reduction of iron below the MCL in almost all the samples. So yes, this is why I think John will continue. This is a solution that they're going to pursue. It appears to be working. I never go with, I don't think anybody would, a single test, a single episode. So yes, starting on Monday, I believe we're going to once again do it in a much larger area and run the experiment again, run the flushing again, and expect to get the same results.
Yeah, we initiated that kind of low velocity flushing in mid-April, and we'll continue to do that and continue to test to make sure we stay below these levels. And so that'll mean, and by low volume, we're really at like 5 to 10 gallons per minute when we do the flushing. So we'll verify with the testing, and we'll do this flushing effort on and off really over the next couple of years until this waterline project comes up for construction. Right now it's on the 2025 schedule. We're planning to pull that into 2024. I don't think we can make 2023 just because of the SRF funding component, but this appears to have done the job.
What's the cadence on flushing?
I'm sorry?
What's the cadence? Like how frequently are you doing the flushing?
Well, my understanding, and Chris is here, is that we did it that day on April 14th, and then we'll be doing it again this coming week, so about 4 weeks.
Every other week or every 4 weeks?
Once we see, we're going to do before tests, right? So we've flushed it 4 weeks ago. We'll see where it is before we flush. If it happens to be quite low, then perhaps 4 weeks was enough. I somehow doubt that. So once we see how well this works, I imagine we'll increase the frequency until we have a permanent flushing, and they will determine what that rate is. We will determine what that rate is as we measure the irons and see. I guess we'll keep it as low as we can, plus a little change. But I don't think we know what the rate will be now. I mean, we did it once. We're going to do it again. And then we will determine the rate based on what we find, I'm sure.
And what do we know about the one resident that seems to be mostly impacted by this? Have they?
We've been in touch with them, and Tim Bledsoe's been in touch.
I have been in touch.
Dan's been in touch.
Tim, okay. Well, yes. So we have, I have dealt with many customers in the many years, and yes, we have a very polite, nice customer who's very understanding, who's not one who believes that a complex system such as one that gives one drinking water should work 100% all the time, no matter what. And don't bother me at my house. He fully understands that the waters are very old, that this is not our fault, and he's been quite understanding. Mind you, we have given him lots of testing. We've tested the inside of his house. One of our lab technicians, who was sent to take samples yesterday, tested his refrigerator filter for iron. We will give him any answer that is of concern to him as it happens. And I understand, and you tell me that we gave him some water? Yes.
No, I guess so it
Tell me.
originally came up, he started raising, his concerns to the district, and I guess after the flushing, does it appear as he seemed to be more satisfied with the quality of the water now that we've
He
started
has
the
not had
mitigation?
that problem since.
Okay.
Mind you, the problem might be his house. The problem might be being compounded by his house. We will determine that. I mean, right now we're giving him iron-laden water, but the water that came out of his house was much greater than what we had been in our pipes. Of course, that's called a first draw test, and one waits 8 hours before one takes a draw. And when I sampled my own house, my iron was at 700 on a first draw. That's not unusual, especially houses in the 70s, I think. So yes, we might have to let him know, and it is an older house, that he should be flushing his water all the time. Right now, we're not recommending that because the water going in his house has iron anyway, so flushing wouldn't make that much difference. But yes, we will continue to take first draws from his house. And once we're able to tell him, the hydrant in front of your house has no iron or very low iron, and the water inside your house seems to have a lot, that happens, and we basically politely tell them this is your problem.
They might have like galvanized pipes or something in their house, or
Yeah, plumbing. I guess that would be galvanized or steel piping.
well, good. I appreciate you guys really paying attention to this, and yeah, this is good. I mean, we don't want to impact people, and so I appreciate you guys getting on it.
Sounds
I'm
good.
just curious. The taste is. I don't. Not that I can think of iron. Kind of with,
Rusty?
I mean, is it undrinkable?
I think it is. I mean, I have very high standards for my drinking water, though. Yeah, you don't want to see me make tea in the morning. I let the thing run for a long time because I definitely do taste iron. And so, yes, I understand that making tea in particular is very affected by iron in the water.
Is there any way for us to flag folks that are affected by this particular situation, basically to give them some kind of discount on their bill? Just I don't know, if we're asking them to flush their system before using the water, I don't know, it seems like we start getting into,
We're causing the issue.
well, just, I guess exceeding, our base fee and starting to consume more water than they normally would.
This has come up, and this isn't my area of expertise, but we usually ask people to just flush their water anytime they have a complaint about taste. It's like, are you flushing water in the morning? And the first test we have them do is flush your water outside and compare it against the water inside. And I've yet, in the many complaints we've received, ever get someone to tell me that the water outside their house, after they have flushed it for a long time, tastes poorly, except this one customer. When I said, please go outside and flush the water for 10 minutes and then report back to me what it tastes, he said, it still tastes terrible. And he was right. It was iron. But in every other case that we've even gotten callbacks and said, wow, I had no idea, that the water outside tastes great and the water inside does not. So that would be their house. As far as giving them a rebate, I know that we've talked about it, but in many cases, like for this one customer, for instance, he's a renter. So, and he wants a cut in rent because his landlord is not giving him a house that has clean water. He's not wrong. So, giving a discount to the ratepayer may not be as relevant to him anyway.
Thought I might add one thing with the flushing effort as we kind of refine how often to do the flushing and how much. We're planning to install an automated flushing system. It's basically installed in a meter pit, it looks like, and it'll go to the sewer. So we're trying to minimize water while, improving, getting the kind of water quality that the district demands.
Right. We've also increased our overall iron testing. You know, anytime people have a complaint about metallic taste or whatever it is, we'll add an iron test. Iron is not a test we ever did at people's homes unless it was a first draw and they requested it, and you often paid for it. And we've yet to find iron, even in places where the water was clearly, dirty, if you will. Might have been a fire hydrant or whatever else. So we'll see. In this area, however, it may be that it's bigger. We are going to take many more tests now, not just on Red Lake. We took some on War, which is parallel, and there was nothing there. We took some on Herbert. We're going to take many more on Herbert. That's the street that feeds Red Lake, and there was nothing there. But we're going to also take the parallel streets that go all the way, I think, to Glenwood, and see, because they were probably all built at the same time. So we might report back that it's a bigger problem than we thought.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
That's all I have today. Thank you.
John, can I ask just one question about something I had raised, a few months back? It was in regard to working with kind of staff members of with young kids and some of the challenges they were having in the community. I just wanted, I know there had been kind of movement on that, but hadn't been kind of brought back to the board. So I was just curious how that was all moving forward.
Yeah, we've had a number of staff meetings on this. We've kind of developed a little in-house task force. And then part of that effort is we've gone to different agencies to see what they're doing and see if they're having similar problems, to see if there's some way that we can work together to help solve the problem. Haven't had very little success on that, although other agencies are interested in partnering should we come up with some kind of solution, with the exception of the Tahoe Prosperity Center is interested in pulling all of us together and working on this problem community-wide. So I don't believe that meeting has been set up that I'm aware of with Tahoe Prosperity Center, but we're in touch with them. We are working internally on kind of a remote work policy that would greatly help our young mothers and fathers to continue working, keep the balls moving while they have infants, especially infants at home.
No, I mean, as I was coming in here today, Trevor was a proud dad.
Yes.
Proud dad would do was showing me photos,
Right.
And so kind of brought the issue back to my attention. And I think too, granted there's going to be the heavier lift, but also glad to hear that you're looking towards, kind of the quick fixes or the things we can do in-house without, great expense, just looking to utilize the opportunities that exist for us.
Right. We have been in touch with the school district, the Boys and Girls Club, Tahoe Prosperity Center, the city, the college, even Lake Valley yesterday, and just seeing what their needs are out there. And people are willing to work together, but we don't have a lot of solutions right now. But this remote work would actually help quite a bit in the short term.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just a bit of flexibility, I think, would ease a lot of stress and would help families greatly. Yeah.
Yeah, right now we have employees changing their family planning because of this issue. They're putting names on the college list for infant care before a year or so before that child is born. So, I mean, that's the kind of backlog that's occurring in town. I think there might be 0 other infant care facilities in town. So it's a very real problem. We're concerned about losing our own employees. We're concerned about a lot of when we go out for these recruitments, we're being asked about remote work, those types of things. So all these are kind of working together. We're looking for some both short-term and long-term solutions.
Great, thank you so much.
I had a question. Maybe it's for Chris, but I was just curious, as we move into fire season, how are we doing on exercising our fire hydrants and being ready for the impending situation?
Sure. I can kick it off, Chris, if you have something to add, that's great. If you recall last year, we hired a water asset management position for underground repair water, and it really accelerated that effort to check almost 2,000 of our hydrants. I think right now we've checked 1,700 hydrants. We fixed every hydrant that was not working. up to this point. So we have, is it 1,700 hydrants? We're at 1,200 hydrants, so got you. So we have like 700 hydrants left to test. We just, that position was open for a number of months, the water specialist position. We now have a permanent employee in that position, and he's out there, and this is his first course of business. I think we'll have the rest of those hydrants at least looked at initially in the over the summer.
This summer or midwinter. Right now, he's out there doing some projects, looking at valves, doing mock shutdowns for our mainline water projects right now. He'll be done in the next week or two. And that's our other goal, is to start to get on the fire hydrants.
Great. Don't want to show up to a fire hydrant and have it not turn on.
That's right. That's right. As soon as we can get those done, we'll all be a lot happier.
If I could add a little bit, I mean, I have a dashboard up right now.
Oh, great.
Currently, we only have one that we've identified as fire. They're not all of 1,200 that we've inspected, so it's been a pleasant surprise that the majority of our hydrants are functional and are in relatively good condition. So hopefully we'll continue to see that as things catch up with us.
It might be zero, but it won.
I think that's the same one I looked at earlier. It is functional, and we are in the process of removing it off of the dashboard. It was just put on there, right when that position first started. We put it on there as a stiff hydrant and drained real slow. It's still operable, so I asked to have that removed actually about 3 hours.
So on that hydrant dashboard, when we go out and do those assessments for each of the hydrants, I think we have 5 different levels of, is it totally not working? Is there problems that need to be fixed? Or is it everything fine? And I think there's 1 or 2 things in between. So certainly we replace the ones that aren't fixing right away or do a complete rehab. And then we have a number of other ones that we need to go back, adjust the grade, do some maintenance on. So we're getting there.
I just noticed just walking around my neighborhood, like some of the fire hydrants, the plugs, I mean, it's almost below grade. I mean, they're kind of
Yeah,
deep. So
same
it's
here.
kind of like they need to come up a little higher, especially, I don't know if we can put a collar on or something to bring them up.
There's an extension kit,
Yeah.
sure. So that's one of those things on the list as we go back on the second or third round, is to raise those up where we can.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm not feeling fire season.
It's coming, man.
I don't know, I just say that like I was in a great mood, lovely meeting.
It's coming. I'm getting rain maybe Sunday, so we'll see.
Yeah, definitely don't want that again. Okay. If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.